Calling to order the Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission meeting for 12 October 2023. We'll have a roll call of voting members. Keith Allgood, see he's absent. Tony Thompson. Here. Tony Gross.
Here.
Mike Hargis. Here. Lauren Hill.
Here.
Mike Patnode here. Craig Pitch.
Here.
Maurice Spafford, absent. Bob Stoller.
Here.
Okay. Non-voting staff, Sharon Armstrong, planner. Here. Peter Camara, engineer.
Here, if I might, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, this is Peter Camara,
Right.
who is a part of the city engineer who's joined us. And I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who he was.
Hi, Peter. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ex officio, John Lawless, city manager.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum. You have in your packet the 10 August Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we approve the 10 August Commission meeting minutes. And you have the Planning Commission meeting agenda before you, but Sharon wanted to recommend an amendment.
I do, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under item 10, new business, we have a two-lot subdivision, which is in our urban growth boundary that came to us from the county. I would like to request permission to move that to the front of the agenda because it's a very simple matter, but quickly taken care of.
Okay, so if we move 10A to the front of the agenda preceding old business. So it would be preceding item 9. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve this agenda with that amendment?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so this agenda passes as amended. All right, community input. So may I see a hand, show of hands of anybody who wants to talk during community input? 1, 2, 3, sir. Are you wanting to? Just him? So 2. Okay, so this will be limited to 3 minutes. And unless we have a majority vote to extend it. And we shall limit comments to the agenda items, relevant comments, and they should be constructive comments. Okay, so the first person who wants to speak. Okay, sir.
Hey,
Can you come up and tell us who you are? And
yeah. My name's John Tarver.
okay.
That's my dad, Mark Tarver.
Okay.
We have the property at 119 Lubin Hills under contract, and we are on the agenda for next month. But we wanted to come here today and show our faces and introduce ourselves to y'all and show us this concept plan that we've developed. I can walk it around here. It is for 121 single-family homes for rent on one lot, so it will be subdivided with some green space here you can see, and this is just an early concept plan. But again, we wanted to come here and introduce ourselves and introduce our idea to y'all.
And where is this?
This is at 119 Lubin Hills Road.
This is behind where all the gas stations are, right?
Yes, sir.
Gasoline.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there it is, and this is going to evolve. You can see here that there's also 2 commercial lots here on West Kingston Springs Road. This is Chris Stewart's land. We've got a informal agreement. We'll become formal soon with him to get an easement through his property and grade down for commercial. I understand, talking with some folks in the city, that commercial here in this area is very important, so I wanted to point that out to y'all as well. And this is going to grow and evolve, and like I said, we're on the agenda for
Okay.
next month.
All right, so thanks for the introduction.
Sure, thank you.
How many homes again?
121.
Okay, next person. Sir, if you could come up and state your name, where you live.
Thanks all. Thank you all.
Have a good night.
My name is Bill Rogers. I'm 1660 South Harpeth Road. I'm not sure whether you said that I needed to be on the agenda. I mean,
No, sir, you don't, but I want to remind the board that we do not comment during a community input forum, so.
yeah, I understand. What I'm bringing it up, and I'm not sure where, I'm interested in the road that's in the city, South Harpeth Road. is completely, we got mud coming through. We got big potholes at the end of the, where the new bridge is that you can break an axle in. I know the county has worked it out with the golf club about repaving and fixing our road back there. My concern is where from the city limits on to where it ties into CC Road or even all the way into the interstate. The road's in pretty sad shape, and I'm afraid that this winter, if you haven't been there, we've got no pavement, no gravel. We got dirt that we're driving on. So I would really like to see the city really look at that hard, because I'm afraid this winter is just gonna fall off pieces
Okay.
once it starts.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So, is that the end of public forum? Any other comments? Okay, so community input section is closed. Now, just item 8 on the agenda, just a reminder on declaration of conflict. If any member has a personal interest of any kind in a matter that is before our commission today, he or she shall disclose his or her interests. It's defined in our Kingston Springs Municipal Code, Title I, Chapter 4, Section 142. So any declarations of conflict? Okay. So we'll start with formerly item 10A, the final plat Hill subdivision, 1447 CC Road. Is that something you're going to discuss, Sharon? Okay.
Yes, sir. For the planning commission's edification, in front of you is a copy of this 2-lot subdivision. This property is in Cheatham County, not within the city limits of Kingston Springs. Under our urban growth plan agreement, when a property is rezoned by the county and then the owner of the property wishes to subdivide, it comes to Kingston Springs because it's in our urban growth boundary. So we end up using their zoning ordinance and our subdivision regulations to review these. So the purpose of the subdivide, it is more than 5 acres at the rear of the lot that's being divided, at the rear, which is the back lot, so to speak. So that does not fall under subdivision definition for the state of Tennessee. If it's more than 5 acres, we don't have any control over the way they divide it. In addition to that, you'll note that it's being served by a very long 50-foot right-of-way from the front of the lot to the back. The county has no restrictions on flag lots or width to length ratio in their zoning ordinance. So those two elements for us are completely out of the equation. 5-acre rule, and so this is known as a 1-lot subdivide with a petition at the back. So what we review in the petition is to make sure they have a 50-foot reservation for access to the road. Originally, this property was accessed off of Moonshine Hollow, which is not a county road, not a public road. It's a private easement. So we informed them that they would have to develop this into access for this rear lot off of the main road, which is CC Road. So the first lot in the front, it left a residual lot of 4.720 acres, which is already developed. They were required to do a duplicate septic field on the purposes of this subdivision, but it meets all of our requirements for a subdivision lot. So if there are there any questions beyond that? I have talked to the building official who represents the planning commission in the county about looking at their restrictions for length to width. This is a very long driveway on this flag lot, and whether or not they want to encourage that type of development within the county. But the lot that we're primarily interested in is lot number 1. It meets all the circumstances of divide. It is presently developed. It has a septic system. It has public water, and there is a residence on the property.
So what is it? We're approving the divide?
You're approving
subdivide?
lot 1 of
Okay.
this plat.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions for Sharon on that?
Can you, it's hard to tell, where exactly on CC Road is this? Out of curiosity.
It would be a little bit difficult for me to, it's not in a particularly steep area. There is a curve, as you can see, coming
Right,
into
I see
the
that.
property there. The owners of this property sold it last year. And they sold it to an older couple who was subdividing the rear lot to their son, who's also moving here from out of area, in order to build. So the exact location of, I apologize, Mr. Hitch, I should have an aerial or something for you. We can get that to you
I'm
later.
just,
That would be
that's why I'm
helpful.
just curious where, trying to figure out exactly, I don't know where Moonshine Hollow is. so.
It's just before you get to cross country.
There you go.
Okay,
I looked it up.
all right, thank you.
It's Brown Hills property.
And we've been there since 1974.
Oh, y'all are not selling, I'm sorry, I'm relaying information, I apologize to the commission, I'm relaying information relayed to us from the building official. So you guys have been there for a really long time? There isn't a problem with the lot 1 or the lot 2, they're just simply the body that has to review it and recommend on it. And I did not realize the applicants were here, normally the surveyor comes,
Okay.
so thank you for coming.
Okay,
Got it?
so, do we have a motion to? Motion to approve. Okay,
Second.
you have a second, Craig, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions or discussion on this? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. You can depart if you want, or you can stay for the long meeting.
It'll be entertaining.
If we could, I apologize again, Mr. Chairman, it seems like tonight's gonna be that night. If we could take a couple of seconds and have the secretary sign it, they can take it
Oh,
with them.
okay.
And that way they won't have to make an additional trip, but we'll need to get the Mylar signed, copies of that, and that can be done just as an aside, but,
Okay.
Planning Commissioner Stoller will be the one to sign that.
Okay.
And then they can take it with them. We will keep one copy for filing here, and one copy goes with them. That saves them an additional trip.
You have a blue pen, Bob?
Get a blue pen?
He's got it.
Thank you for allowing that. Mr. Chairman, if you want to proceed, you can. The next 2 items, well, the next item is just an update.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure we had Bob's attention as we went through the update.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
John gets one, we get one, we keep the other.
One's to, and I'll take this one to the county.
You can keep one for our file. So, do you want this sleeve to wrap it back up in?
She wanted to know, did she take that copy to the county?
Yes.
She has a sleeve if you want to wrap it up so it doesn't get ruined.
Is it okay if I step in there?
Yeah, go ahead, you come on up.
Thank you. I'll take any extra copies if you don't want them anymore.
Here you go.
Oh, you want all the copies? Yeah.
Be careful what you ask for, you might get it.
I'll take it.
Everybody just pass it down this way, I'll roll on for it.
There we go. Just pass it down.
This is over where you are, Brandon.
This is her house.
Not your spot.
Yeah, her house.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I was, nobody got
Ten Grammys, big.
I didn't realize I was in such company.
When we built up there.
I just didn't know where Moonshine Hollow Road.
They cut that down to access stuff.
Whoops, bless her
Well,
heart.
this is that we bought all the first.
Right, okay.
My mind.
Here are some rolls.
I got them all already.
Give her a hand there.
I haven't taken care of her for 2 years. They still have run out, they do.
There you go.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
Why you think I'm gonna build a house? So she takes care of me.
There we go.
You know what they say? Thank you so much.
That's right.
Mike, just help her out.
Your turn, right?
I can put her and plant me out in front yard, and her behind me.
Good to see you, Brownie.
You too.
I'll tell Michelle, I'll tell her you said hello.
Take care. Okay, so first item of old business, 9A, is that something you're gonna discuss? Is there somebody here representing Leslie?
Actually, Mr. Reisner is here, but it's just a general update on the events of
Okay.
Ellsworth PUD, and the city engineer will likely have some comments as
Okay.
well. We issued a stop work order, which is in your packet. During the grading process, damage was done to Second South Cheatham water lines and to some of the stub outs for our sewer line. So a stop was issued. We had a meeting with the developer, Mr. Merville. And several people from his team attended that meeting as well. And Second South Cheatham attended the meeting. So as a result of that meeting, Second South Cheatham gave information and direction to the developer in order to address the issue. We had a conversation with Mr. Lovelace, who was also the engineer for that project. And it was around the area of the detention pond and where the water lines were. So in the process of submission for the project, the detention area unfortunately was on top of the water lines. So that's what created, when they started grading for the detention area, they hit some of the water lines and water meters were damaged. So that, my understanding is, and Peter, you can help me out with this, is they submitted the information to the Ellerslie folks, gave them direction on what needed to be done. Second South Cheatham took the position they would do the repairs themselves, and I believe the developer provided the funding that was requested for that.
So to be clear, and maybe I should declare this as a potential conflict, I'm also the engineer for Second South Cheatham. So if anything comes up involving them, I want you guys to know that. But because of that, I kind of can speak to this a little bit. Second South Cheatham figured out an estimate to repair and inspect their water lines in the area where the work had been done, and provided that to the owner, and that was paid for pretty quickly. What I'm waiting for now is revised plans that show the detention pond somewhere else. What I would recommend the city require would be that at the end of construction, that all of the sewer infrastructure in the area be re-inspected to make sure that it's fixed and or not rebroken. So when they're completely done, have all that inspected. Did I answer the question?
You did.
Okay.
I think you answered the question very concisely. We have also had a request from the city engineer that we have a new lot under development where an application has been in place now, or not in place, but applied for a couple of weeks ago. It is not really close to that, but the city engineer has requested that that particular line be scoped before the step tank goes in. I've informed the builder of that. Communication will go out to the developer tomorrow because it's the developer's responsibility to scope the system to ensure that nothing's fractured during the grading process. And the builder of the lot is not the one who's saddled with that responsibility. So I've informed him that that requirement is going to exist on that lot. So he's aware of it, the builder. And we'll send out public comments tomorrow or early next week to Energy Fit Solutions and Mrs. Merville to let her know that that scoping is going to be required, and then before the project's closed out, just to ensure the sewer's stable and everything's fine.
So this is additional lot under development in Eversley?
There were 7 lots when we first closed the PUD, so there are several other lots that are still available for development there.
Okay.
So,
Just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
yes, there are lots that are still ready. There is still not a proposed plan for phase 2 or 3. Those lots exist in phase 1.
Okay.
Okay, so this is just really an update.
Okay, so we finished with item A then?
When the site plan is revised and the plans are revised for the detention pond, it will come back here.
Okay.
For review and approval.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item B, Town of Kingston Springs plat acquisition of a portion of map 91N, Group D, parcel 39, and a replat of map 91, parcel 99. Is that something you're going to cover, Sharon?
Yes, sir. We tabled this, as you know, in order for the town to secure a rezone of this property. It's the parcel adjacent to where the farmer's market and Art and Park and all that takes place now. They have done the rezoning. It's now closed. The plat has been reviewed previously. We were on the verge of approving it when they requested that we table it in order for the zoning to go forward. That's been done. The zoning has been corrected. You have a copy of the plat in your packet. We didn't bring the Mylar tonight, but John has that available. So we're seeking plat approval to revise those plat lines.
Okay, any questions for Sharon on that plat approval?
So
Okay, do we have a motion?
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, so now we're on to item 9C. Roy McPherson, the Willows Development, 129 East Kingston Springs Road, stop work order, notice of violation, revised civil plans, performance bond geotech report. Sharon, is that something you're going to lead off?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. There are some days I'm not real happy to be that popular. Mr. McPherson applied for a renewal of his grading plan. As you are aware, we approved the plan for the pub unit development 2 years ago, so that expired at the end of September. So he asked for renewal of his grading plan permit as well, and that item to be on the agenda. We did not have a meeting, as you know, in September. When I conducted the inspection for the renewal of the grading permit, I found issues. One, there was grading that was outside the footprint of the approved grading plan by 6/10 of an acre. I found some debris on the site that is unacceptable. It was construction debris, brick, foundations. There was some water piping, some PVC piping, other things. So at that point, I informed Mr. McPherson that I would not be able to issue the permit until we had some of these issues resolved. Since that initial contact with Mr. McPherson, he has a revised plan, which is in your packet, to expand the scope, and these are decisions that this planning commission is going to have to make. The scope at the rear of the lot, if you remember, this has 3 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 on this project for the 40 apartment units. The expanded area is, and I'm going to hold this up, because you have one in your packet, you can see the walking track. So where it was exceeded is in this area, right here, 6/10 of an acre that was exceeded. There is a retaining wall back there. So your options as a planning commission on this first item for this site plan, which is going to determine what the final grading plan is going to look like when it's resubmitted, is you need to consider whether or not you want to approve the 6/10 of an acre that is outside the approved grading plan. If not, then that's going to have to be excised, dug out, and we're going to go through that process of disposal again, and the retaining wall is also going to be moved. Then, in addition to that, there was fill in that area without geotech reports. If you remember, we require those for compacting to make sure the ground is solid. Those geotech reports were not filed. The geotech engineer that Mr. McPherson initially employed was no longer on site or available. So Mr. McPherson was informed that we needed an overlay of the original grading plan on the new area disturbance. So a surveyor was brought out to the site to survey the difference between the approved grading plan and where they actually ended up. Secondarily, he employed a geotech firm. I was contacted by them. They were instructed to walk the site and determine bore sites for compacting. There's a copy of that in your packet as well. It's overlaid on the grading plan. They sent me a mock-up. It's this document where you can see the parking lots. When they initially sent this document, there were 2 borehole locations in the rear of the property where the grading was expanded and the fill was expanded in the rear, back towards phase 3, back of the lot. I requested they added 2 additional bore sites, bore locations there, because that is entirely new fill. All of these polka dots are bore sites, and the bore locations that were selected by the geotech firm after much conversation with me are the areas that are going to contain the footprint of buildings or parking lots. We need to make sure that they're stable. They also expressed some concern. I've had conversation with Mr. McPherson, who is actually pretty responsive to that comment about the walking track and the grade of it, because it's pretty steeply sloped and it would be accessible to all people. I could probably navigate it, but some people could not. So there needs to be some additional grading there. So that's the second thing that you need to consider in your plan. The third thing is we had requested, if you'll remember, several months back, a performance bond from Mr. McPherson for the work on this site because it's all private development and a PUD, planned unit development, is completely enclosed. The only city component in this, if you'll remember, is the bore into the road to reach the sewer line on the other side of the road. Everything off the site, off of that road right-of-way is theirs to maintain. We were advised by the city attorney that she thought, and with engineering comments as well, that we should maintain that connection under the road over to the sewer main in case something goes wrong and require them to post a maintenance bond in order to take care of the cost if that should ever come up, much as we've done on other developments in the past. So, progress since these conversations take place, I have been presented with borehole locations, I have been presented with the expanded grading area, and Mr. McPherson has secured the performance bond. Mr. McPherson, do you have that document with you tonight? May I borrow it for a minute, please? This bonds the roads, the curb, the gutter, the sewer, the bore into the road. Every single element of this project has been included in this bond. Mr. McPherson was required to use the town's standard bonding form. The bond is in the amount of $481,000, $640.25. So it's nearing $500,000 bond for this location. It covers the lift stations, it covers the sewer tanks, it covers the roads, it covers every single element of the development. Yes, and it's secured as of this week. So, having said all that, any questions about what I've discussed with you so far? The boarding hole locations, the expanded grading footprint, and the performance bond with the restrictions and requirements that were issued to him with stop work order.
Questions?
So we need to take these to the planning commission at your pleasure and at your consent one at a time. Because if you don't approve the expansion of the grading permit, the rest of this is somewhat moved. So I have explained to Mr. McPherson the gravity of exceeding the grading plan that you approved. It creates stormwater runoff. It's in the area that's supposed to start sloping for detention area. His engineer is going to have to figure out another plan for that, for stormwater. I've explained to him that when we require him to keep a geotech on board, he keeps a geotech on board so that we can ensure that this fill is stable. Throughout the site, front to back, I noted some minimal areas in phase 2 and 3 that contain debris that we do not allow. Plastic pipe, plumbing pipe, copper pipe, brick, foundations, other things that we just simply do not allow as fill and you can't, also we don't allow any organic material because it decomposes and then it creates sinkholes at a later date. So all of that's been walked through again. The geotech and I are on the same page with what needs to be done and why. We need to, one, determine is there any fill in here that, as we had the last time on this project, is carcinogenic or contaminates the water stream or has any other issues. So they're aware of what we need for borehole locations and lab reports. But the first step is whether or not you want to allow the fill that was deposited outside of the grading permit, which means it's unpermitted, and expand that footprint. So that's the first consideration. So I'll take questions, comments.
I have a comment, and it's just the fact that I think this has been ongoing for a long time. Once again, we're faced with this issue where stuff is being put here. We have, I mean, this could get in our water system. There's all kinds of issues, and this whole project has been, over the years, very disrespectful to the entire community of Kingston Springs, is what I would say about it, honestly. Like, it's one thing after another, and just seems like a lot of dishonesty, and it just bothers me.
Are you saying there are two pieces to the first thing we have to approve? One of them, part of it is expanding, but the other part is that we have to allow them to leave the inappropriate fill?
No.
Okay, I misunderstood.
So can you say
Would
those
you
three parts
would you say that
Yeah,
again then, please?
As we go through that, and for some of the planning commission members are new and they weren't around when the first round of this happened. The purpose of the boreholes and having a geotech and the lab reports is to establish what's been installed. we do not allow any organic material, any volatile or volatile organic compounds that could contaminate the streams. We don't allow any of that. This site, for your edification and your knowledge, Mr. Kitch and the other new members, was excavated heavily in between 2017 and 19 because the amount of the fill that was installed was unsuitable. So it was removed, taken to a landfill that accepts that. The developer was required to haul tickets for those loads so that we would know what came out. They furnished lab reports which came before this body, which disclosed what was in the soil. And then the lab report was done post-excavation of the site to determine that it was clean. And no, and I in no way meant to intimate that I'm asking you to approve anything. I would never do that. So the first part is if we don't expand the footprint of the grading plan, then the submitted plan to bore becomes a moot point because those locations would change, because there are two in the area of that extended.
So this is,
expanded
expanding the footprint is to cover the place where additional fill was that we want bored. So this allows the boring to take place to answer
Get
the
the
questions.
reports
Okay.
And
So-
if we do not,
If you
allow it.
don't approve that, then that area of fill between what was permitted in the grading plan originally and what has been installed in the expanded area that covers 6/10 of an acre will have to be removed along with the retaining wall that is behind it.
So it's still there now?
It's, well, obviously it's
Yeah,
still there.
okay.
Uh,
That's what I'm trying to get down to.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
and-
Mr.
and-
Kitch. What happens in these situations that occur, they don't happen very often, but when they do, we issue an immediate stop. So one, we can get our bearings. I walk the site, as I do every single time a permit has to be removed or renewed, I go back on that site. So it was during that process that, and a phone call complaint where I discovered unsuitable fill.
Okay, so expanding the grading plan is for the purpose of allowing us to conduct the bores to get the information we need.
I wouldn't say it would, I think that it would be more like if we expand the grading plan, then that they would then at that point be required to do the boring. But if we don't do it, you know what I mean? It's not for the purpose of getting the boring. If
Okay.
we don't expand the grading plan, the boring is
okay,
a
and
moot
the
point. It
boring,
doesn't have
the
anything to do with
boring
anything.
May I address
shows
that? May I address that? Regardless of whether you expand the footprint of the grading plan, boring will occur,
Just not there.
just not on that 6/10 of an acre. If you look at the boreholes on the site, they're all over the site.
Yeah.
So the area of expanded fill, this is a blow up of that very rear of the property. This is where the 6/10 acre, this is a recreational. Page 3. So the area of expansion along the grading plan is back here. So your first, the only impact in the first decision is whether or not that is to be removed in that area, expansion or not. That's your first decision. And when I said it affects boreholes, there are 2 borehole locations in that area that have been proposed. If you remove it, there's nothing to bore in that area. That's just the whole site is much larger than that. So does that help you clarify?
Yes.
Or a question on this Clover Engineering.
Yes,
So
sir.
it shows the dots being boring locations, yes?
Yes,
And the dots with a star boring locations that might be too steep.
that is correct. So that's something that if it's not Clover Engineering, this is overlaid on Clover's plan.
Okay.
The engineering firm for Geotech is a separate engineering firm. They're technical experts for that type of work. So they simply use the existing site plan so that we can see all these things together. The original grading footprint, expanded grading footprint, the layout of the buildings, and where the boreholes are.
So
I asked
show
them to
me
do
where
that.
these steep locations are on this.
Yes, as I said in my introductory of this, in this area towards the back. this-
Show me on this.
Right.
Where are the ones with the stars?
I'm not seeing them either.
The ones, yes, sir. The ones with the stars on them are at the rear of the property,
Okay.
next to and adjacent to the walking track. That's where they
Can you
are.
point on the map where that is?
It's on.
Is it in
this
the gray
location.
area?
Pardon?
Is it in the gray area?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So if you look at the parking lot at the top of that page and you flip back one page before, that's the same parking lot that you can see twice. That gives you a representation of that north area
Yeah, it
beyond.
does.
Where this page misprinted, you can see that on the previous
There you go,
page.
one page before. You can see a better layout that helps you with where the walking track and the two buildings. May I approach Mr.
Yeah,
Sullivan
I got it, I got
to
it.
help orient him?
So we're talking.
I thought we were talking on here.
I think we're talking in here.
Yeah, that's the parking lot talking about this. There's these boards and it's gray.
This is the area.
Yeah, but how does that relate to this?
The plan, I think it's.
That's the parking lot, right?
So
This is that part doing
right there.
There's one building.
Anybody else have that orientation?
That might be just gray area.
This
We're talking right in
building,
here.
this
right
building
here.
and this parking lot, if you go back
Translate
to
to that.
this
So it is
page,
area.
is
Okay, these are
this
the-
building and
okay.
this parking lot. This building, all of this didn't print right.
Parking lot.
So that's missing right here.
And that's where they put too much fill going towards the back, they went too far back.
Okay, that's
And
the
those
area that,
boreholes,
if we approve
one
the
is in this
expansion,
building
these are
and
where
then
it's
several
gonna be.
around where they went too
And if we
far.
don't approve,
That's
then
where
we
they
just
would
have to
be
take all that out.
doing those extra
An
boreholes.
acre out and haul it.
But you can't really see it
Bore will
'cause the
tell us
printer
what's in it, as well as whether or not
did
it's
something
officially
weird.
compacted.
Well,
And as I said,
after grading that was outside
they're
the
still gonna
original
have to
grading
address grading
plan.
on that walking track.
What was the purpose of that? Is that
I
smooth
think
it
that
out?
was just a mistake.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, before anyone gets to the point of making decisions, I have a couple of observations. If you're interested, we've been living in this project, as you know, for 7 years. We are, no, I'm sorry, 6 years. I have advised Mr. McPherson on a number of occasions that what is lacking on the site is either someone with enough expertise in the operations from a civil engineering perspective to be able to advise him. I have advised him that working on weekends, going outside of the footprint, all of these other issues are gonna result in enforcement action, because the ordinance doesn't give me any grace at all. When he exceeds his permit, I have to issue a stop and bring it here. So, I understand Tony's point, I understand everybody's concerns. I think the members that were sitting on this planning commission at the time this first occurred, some 6 years ago, we lived this on a monthly basis for about 2 years to get it resolved. So we find ourselves in that position again. My recommendation, and I guess I needed to state that up front, is that a civil engineer of our choosing will go on that site every 2 weeks. One, if you approve it, I'm not telling you one way or the other, I'm just saying if you do, if you approve this expansion, or if you approve this project to continue, because right now it's in a state of suspension. The PUD, the grading plan, everything. If you approve it to move forward, then those inspections need to be done. The slope on that walking track needs to be addressed. We need to know what's in that dirt. We need to know where the detention's going to go. And at that point, those are all pass-through charges to the applicant, just as every other charge is. So, I did my inspection that I always do when the permit is to be renewed for grading. And when I topped the rise in the road as it goes up the hill, I stopped at that point, told the operator who was on site, you're outside the footprint of your grading plan. That's how many times that staff, from a layman's perspective, has walked this site. It was immediately obvious to me that we had a problem. I also went to the front of the lot where no fill is supposed to be stored on phase one. It's not supposed to be visible from the road. There were 2 piles of dirt there. One of them contains the debris from a brick house that was demolished and dumped on the site. So Mr. McPherson explained to me that's a sorting area. I explained to Mr. McPherson that takes place in area 2 or 3. We don't want that visible from the road. We don't want it tracked on the road, and it's not supposed to be on the site. Someone needs to monitor these loads coming in and out.
Daily.
Nobody on staff has that time. We're all, obviously from your packet, occupied on day-to-day operations of the city, so we can't be present every day to inspect every load. That's the purpose of the geotech. But beyond that, someone needs to be there to ensure that whatever you approve, they stay within that footprint, because at the back of this lot, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's a pretty sharp drop off the back of this lot. And so we have runoff to contain with it, and we don't have a place to put it, because now that slope cannot be obtained at the rear of the property to get to the retaining area. So that's gonna require revision of the plans, the original civil plans that were submitted. We're still trying to work through the bore under the road. We're still trying to, so it's been that process nonstop. So again, your steps are, if you approve the grading plan, the bore will take place in areas where it's too steep. When it comes back that it's too steep to navigate, that has to be addressed. And it's up to their engineer to submit a set of plans to do that, and up to our engineer and staff to review that to make sure that it complies.
Okay, so a very narrow question.
Yes, sir.
If we approve the expansion of the grading plan, is there any downside to the town of us approving an expansion of the grading plan for the purposes you expressed? Do we lose anything in that process?
There can be. If you approve the expansion of the grading plan and the footprint of the site is not large enough to accommodate stormwater controls and runoffs from this property, which has a very steep rise now because of the level of fill, then that could create a stormwater issue that could eventually, if not controlled, lead to the road, the highway. It could also invade other people's property. In addition to that, filling and grading, as Mr. Thompson can tell you, is not for the faint of heart if you get it right. But there is an up and a downside to this decision. The upside of this decision is that we bore it, we find out what we need, and then if necessary, they remove a portion of the retaining wall to get the slope necessary to construct detention downhill.
What if during the boring, they find a lot more material that shouldn't be in there?
They'll excavate the site, incur the cost as they did the first time to take it to a landfill. If they abandon the project, same process, it becomes an enforcement process. They will scout the site.
So if we don't expand it, they're still gonna have to remove the fill that is questionable at this point,
That is
that was
correct.
not approved, and we could basically go forward with the original plan.
Regardless of whether you expand or not expand, if unsuitable fill is found on site, it will have to be excavated and removed. So it doesn't matter in that perspective, one way or the other, whether you approve the expanded grading plan or not. I observed unsuitable materials in all three areas of property. So regardless, it has to be those unsuitable materials. And if there are volatile organic compounds in the soil, it has to be excavated. We don't know that yet. We won't know until we get a lab report.
And so to go back, I'm having trouble following
Yes, sir. I
to
understand.
what you said, and this may be an engineering question. If we expand the grading plan, are we increasing the risk of stormwater running off of that lot by expanding the grading plan? Are we increasing the risk of the current lot to have stormwater run off it?
Yes and no. So the no is the expanded grading plan does not add any more impervious surfaces like pavement and buildings. So the amount of water running off the site will not increase. The other no is by approving the expanded footprint, you're actually disturbing less earth because you're not redisturbing what's already been disturbed. So you have less potential for erosion. However, it makes for a larger development with a bigger footprint. So to me, at this point, the best thing for not necessarily the town. The best thing for the environment, although this doesn't make sense, is to allow the expansion if the boreholes come back clean. If not, if they have to remove the stuff anyway, then
Then
it's not
it's the
gonna,
same
it's
either
not
way.
gonna, it's the same either way, right.
And we're
And
not
based,
adding,
based on the inspection that's been done, it would seem that we have fill matter that is not approved or appropriate already within this expanded area. Am I correct in that?
I have observed a suitable grade in all three areas on the site. Whether that is scattered across the surface because of sorting that wasn't done properly, I won't know. I mean, I wish I could answer that question, but I don't know until they bore it. That's why there's so many locations.
But in past
Added
records, it's
expanding
shown
it
that
would be
he,
that we could get the bore test to see what it is, what we have.
We can get the bore test regardless because he's under a stop work and it's an enforcement action for boring, just as it was the first time. But I will make this statement, not that it should color anybody's judgment, but there have been thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars placed into this site by the developer. And I understand, I see Mr. Thompson's reaction, that's my initial reaction as well. But there are some state rules with regard to what we can do and what we can't do. If it's considered punitive without a positive result or any outcome, it's just done in a punitive manner. That's why we're doing it the way we're doing it. We're not doing it to punish the developer. We're doing it because we genuinely don't know what we don't know until this bore is done.
The
Yes,
past history says you have to be leery of what's going on.
yes.
Thank you. You know, call it what it is. I mean, you know, history says, you know, covered up and tried to do things that shouldn't have done, and he would already
Do we
be
have
clear.
to, I'm sorry.
He wouldn't be having these problems and dealing with us as much if he'd done it right in the first place.
I would say that's a very fair assessment. I would say that that's also true if he had done it right the second time.
so if we expand the grading plan, and the engineer said we're expanding the size of the development, that doesn't mean we're expanding the size of the project in terms of parking lots or buildings.
No,
We're
sir.
just expanding the size of the
The
approved
grading
grading
plan.
plan. And in doing that, it sounds like if we do that, and if they do the boring and find that there's some fill that doesn't have to be removed, risking less erosion. Is that true? Is that
You
what
are
you said?
indeed, but we also have to take into consideration, to tag on to what Peter said, and what Peter said is very correct. We now have to seek an alternative place to slope to the detention area that's on the civil set of plans, before it drops literally off the back here.
If we expand the grading plan, we have to do that, or we have to do that anyway?
You're gonna have to do it anyway.
Okay,
whether
so
it's-
that's
Whether
not-
it's enforcement action to remove everything and start from
Yeah.
scratch, or whether you.
So that's
approve it.
regardless of whether
Yes,
we
sir.
So no
expand.
matter what happens, that's
So,
gonna have to happen.
I'm just trying to get clear on
Yes.
what we're trying to decide in terms of risk and result, just on
Right.
expanding the grading plan, because that's the first thing we're trying to answer.
And if you're going to expand it, I really, from a staff perspective, encourage this commission to require a site monitor on that project. Because of the,
I would recommend require that anyway.
Yeah, no matter what.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like
Either
regardless
way.
if they expand or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah,
Either way.
I'm just saying, as you go through your deliberations, whether it's enforcement or expanding the project and moving forward, we need a site monitor on that site that can be there. I heard Mr. Thompson's suggestion of every day, but it needs to be frequently enough that we can be ensured that we don't find ourselves after we are told that no activity is taking place from January.
So, yeah, I would propose that site monitor is one item and the grading plan's another. I mean,
Borehole locations or
it's all
another.
one project, but, so we can work through these decisions,
Grading plans first.
yeah, so,
The upside of expanding the grading plan is you don't necessarily have to remove a bunch of fill up front. You
Unless
test
it's-
it, you
unless it's
test it
great.
first, and then you see, do you have a problem? If you do, you do that, and you also modify the retaining wall that's required, correct?
yes.
If we don't approve the plan, then retaining wall doesn't have to be modified, but all the fill's gotta be taken out. Correct? No?
No, sir. Bore locations will be done regardless.
I understand
We'll
that.
test it, so
Right. If it's clean, they don't have to do anything else to it? If we don't approve the plan?
that's
With the
correct.
expansion?
As long as they leave it in a condition that it's that way. So a lot of these conversation points come from my conversations with Mr. McPherson, who has gone from, I don't think this is fair that I've stopped, to, what if I just stop the whole project? And I said, Mr. McPherson, regardless of whether you stop the project or not, you still have to deal with the issue on the ground. You can't leave that site with an unknown. So they're kind of tandem, Mr. Hargis, but not completely intertwined. We can separate the baby in this case.
Well, it sounds like expanding the grading plan to me, what I think I'm hearing, please correct me, it's a lower risk approach to soil erosion, potentially
That's
a
what I'm
lower
getting at.
risk.
Yeah.
It may be the same risk if we find that everything's contaminated, et cetera, with the inappropriate fill. But it sounds like it's a lower risk step, potentially, so I don't see a downside, and I say that as a question. I don't see a downside to expanding the grading plan in terms of erosion and stormwater. Am I missing something there?
You are correct in that assessment. My only comment would be to reiterate that we still have to find an alternative path for the detention area. on
In
this
either,
project.
in either choice?
That's no matter what.
That's no matter what. That's-
Either way.
That's not really part of
Either way.
the.
Yeah, to narrow the decision, we're talking, if it's a given either way, in my mind, that's incidental to the question of are we expanding the
Yes,
grading
sir.
plan or not?
Right.
Okay. All right, does any, yes, sir, Bob?
So the second time that we did a stop work order, right? Didn't we do boring then?
We did.
So we're doing boring again just
On a
because
pre-
there's
on a-
more fill?
Another
On the
violation,
new fill.
another violation.
Okay, so
Well, in between.
it seems like
the-
we're always asking for forgiveness.
Right. In
That's
In
what this
between
has been,
boring
is
the first
6 years
time.
of forgiveness.
I want to make sure the record's clear. In between boring the first time and the request to bore this time, an enormous amount of fill was removed after the bore.
Right,
After the first time.
right.
That's correct.
Okay.
So then fill was reinstalled, and now we find ourselves in a similar position.
But this new dirt that's been there right now has not been there but for about a month and a half.
I would hazard a guess, Mr. Stoller, that given outside information and conversations from surrounding residents, probably started about 4 months ago on weekends.
Okay. So we were good to go up till then. Now we have this added.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if I'm out of place to ask this question.
Well, go ahead.
There
It
are no
seems
other
like, it
places.
seems like the results of, if the boring was, would it be allowed to approve the grading expansion contingent upon the tests coming back saying that it's clean fill? If it's dirty fill, it has to be removed anyway.
It doesn't matter anyway.
Then we can hold them to what they originally approved. But if it's clean, we can leave it alone and not disturb it again. Is that a
I
thing?
don't disagree with that perspective, other than if they don't approve the grading plan, I can't have them approve the boring locations in that expanded area. So they have to, if
So
we
we
do it
gotta do
contingently.
we've gotta approve the grading plan revision to be able to bore there.
That, in that area where it was expanded, yes, because it doesn't exist on any set of plans that we adopted.
Because if you don't approve it, all that stuff's just getting taken to the dump.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if it's dirty or not, it's getting taken, it's getting removed.
Right.
So,
Well, in the interest of, you know, the soil erosion that's gonna occur if we just scrape it all out of there, you know, it seems to me that expanding the plan doesn't have much of a downside. We're gonna test it either way, and if it's dirty, it's gonna have to be removed. So, if we don't expand, it's gotta be removed immediately, and we know that's gonna disturb the ground. It's gonna run off in that creek.
And it
It
really
runs
has,
into the
it
river.
has no impact on the actual development itself.
Right.
It is not, this is grading plan only.
This is
It's
just
not-
grading that,
It's not in the
It's
footprint
screwed
of the roads or parking lots or
Right,
any of
yeah.
that. It's outside of that.
The only improvement in that area, Lauren, is the walking track, which has some issues of its own that need to be corrected. That will come back eventually, as we migrate this process, if this project moves forward, it will come back in a new and improved set of instruction plans.
So expanding the grading plan, we're not saying things weren't done wrong, we're not absolving anything.
No, you're just-
We're trying to find out so we can lower the risk of erosion if in fact we can find some clean bores and not have.
That is
to remove
correct.
that.
and we
don't
can legally
approve it, I
enforce what
can't-
goes on
I
with
can't
the
bore it
results
if you
of
don't
boring, because
Well, then it seems to me we help your position by approving
Okay.
expanding the plan.
I don't
Which gives
disagree
us-
with that statement at all.
Okay, well, then I make a motion that we expand it.
As long as they make sure whoever's checking this is paid for.
We have a motion on the
From
floor.
the county, the city is watching the trucks come in.
Is
We have a
is
motion.
this-
Well, I mean, the motion, so is this where we would need to have a motion that include the site monitor, because we have to have a
Yeah, I
site
think we
monitor.
can,
Or do we want to
we
include it,
can
or do we
add
want a
that back
separate
into
motion?
the discussion now, I just wanted to get it
That's correct.
clear what we were talking about. So the motion would be to expand the grading plan with the requirement for a site
Yes,
monitor.
sir.
Fill in the blank with a requirement for a site monitor when any fill is being brought into the site.
That's correct.
Okay, when any fill is being brought in, a site monitor should be.
Anytime.
That is correct.
Anytime, okay.
which seems to be
And you'll
legal.
need to amend that.
So amended.
Okay, so motion by Mike as amended. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, now, before we vote, are there any other questions or comments on this motion? Okay, see, yes,
Am I
Peter,
allowed to ask a question?
please, I mean,
Your
Um,
questions are very helpful.
For your motion, it may be helpful, I guess it's clarification. Do you mean anytime any fill is being placed on the site, someone that's a representative of the city has to be watching 20, anytime at all? Or is it during periods of time when fill is being added, someone has to be there once a day? I think it would help to further quantify that portion of the motion.
Every 2 weeks. The reason that I suggest every 2 weeks and have that report submitted to staff for review for the site monitor is that in that period of time, it's relatively easy to undo if there's an issue. So we started out doing these inspections every 3 weeks, if you'll remember. Every 2 weeks, there's a site monitor that visits the site every 2 weeks. But that could be left at staff decision, how often, how frequently, and only in periods when the fill is being installed.
so I'm not a construction guy, but that means you can't, from day 1 to day 14, there's no way we could create a hidden mess in those
Yeah.
14 days?
I was gonna say, if it's easy to fix, it's easy to hide.
Yeah, 2 weeks
But
is
at
too
that
long.
point, are we in a position of stating to the developer, I just want to be clear with everybody, that you are going to pay someone on the site 8 hours a day, however many days a week you work, you're gonna pay a pass-through to that person, because I want the city to have some input over who's placed on that site. We've been down this path, this is our 3rd trip down this path with this project. So I would just assume that we had someone that we can have confidence in on the site to give those reports back to us, so that we don't end up where we are now again.
Yeah, well, I don't have, experience in this, so in terms of what's required for effective monitoring and frequency and time of day, I don't know.
Well, I can amend it again to say it's at the discretion of the city planner.
Or the city engineer.
And
The
the
city
city
engineer
engineer.
and city engineer, or city engineer, either one.
Does that make
To
everybody?
me-
Are there any restrictions on when it can,
There will be
when it can be
periods
done? I mean,
of
3 o'clock in the
Heavy
morning or?
rain and snow and winter, where there just won't be anything going on.
And to Craig's question, is there a time of day restriction on dumping?
I mean, it's at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or I heard somebody say weekends here a while ago.
I don't know that the loads are being brought on weekends, Mr. Kitch, but I am aware that grading is taking place on weekends. We don't restrict that necessarily, but my point was a real simple one. We were being told no work was being done And obviously, we're in and out all during the week, so.
Yeah, so we have repeated compliance violations.
Yes.
And we're trying to solve
We're
that
trying to
with the
solve
site
it.
monitor. And is there an instruction, I don't know, is there instruction on time of day dumping? Like you can't dump between dark and daylight? I mean, is there a restriction on dumping?
I have and I think putting it at our discretion helps this. I think what you could require is that fill be dumped and be inspected prior to being graded. Because if it's dumped and then somebody can just walk through a bunch of piles of dirt and say, this all looks adequate, go ahead, I think that may help the problem, depending
Well,
on.
It gets back to your discretion on how you monitor it. Well, all we're saying is, we'd like to have it monitored. You pick the time, you pick the method.
And we do have that requirement, Peter, and you don't have, I know you weren't here before, that requirement's in the permit.
Okay.
That the fill is deposited, it's sorted, it's filtered, if it's unsuitable, it's removed.
So with site monitoring as directed by the city planner and city engineer.
Right.
And we want to make that at the expense of the developer.
Yes, and pass through cost to the
Pass-through
developer.
cost.
That monitor.
With pass-through costs to the developer. All right, so with that motion as amended,
I second.
My only comment is I'm probably inclined to support this as it is now, but I never, ever want to have this conversation again, ever. So, that's
I
all
second
have
that.
okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or any opposed?
Oh,
You're opposed?
yeah.
Okay.
You get a second,
Just-
Warren was a second.
Could you go ahead and just state your reason for our sake, Bob?
Because I'm tired of it.
Okay,
It's been going on and on and on for 7 years.
okay,
And we're just asking for forgiveness over and over and over,
okay,
and we grin.
okay. Thanks for the information. All right, what's the next
The
motion?
next step is to approve the staff recommendations for borehole locations on this project.
Okay. And those were the pictures with the dots? Okay, engineer, are you satisfied with that recommendation as it's listed on that overlay?
I wish I could see it.
Geotech.
I wish I could see these where this is, but from looking at it, it looks the best. It looks fine.
Are you comfortable saying it's good to go?
Yeah, I'd like to look at. Yeah.
I don't know
yes.
where this one came from. The original one has the entire
Yeah.
footprint with the bore locations on it. So,
Do I have this in an email or I can look
you
at it?
do.
Can we defer that question to later in the meeting so that I can find this and look at this without this gray blurs on it?
What we're missing on this particular one, the original one submitted
That is a
by,
big-
for the project, had the walking track and the back area on it. And there were 2 locations in there with notations. Yeah, you should have that. We can move on then, while we're deferring that.
But my answer is probably yes. I just don't want to say yes without looking
Without
at
knowing.
it. But
Okay, I appreciate your diligence. So, I mean, we haven't made a motion or anything on this, but it's something that we're gonna have to cover
You
on this
can-
agenda.
Defer to later in the agenda?
You can defer it till later on the agenda. You can also, and I hate to make, I hate conditional approval, but you can approve it conditional on the approval of the city engineer, who's gonna have to ultimately review the plan set anyway.
So that gives the city engineer then the authority to disapprove it if we're saying
That is
conditional on
correct.
his.
I like that.
You like that option?
Let's do
Because
that.
that moves us forward in the agenda without creating a harm or foul.
Okay.
So a motion to approve the boring overlay, the boring plan, conditionally subject to the city engineer's approval or disapproval.
So moved.
That's correct.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that motion? Do you have one, Sharon?
No, I do not. I was just
Okay.
asking you a question.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Last thing, on your agenda
Just
for
let me
this.
just get a count. Bob, did you oppose that?
No.
Okay. All right, so go ahead, Sharon.
The last thing on your agenda is the bond.
Okay, that's for the McPherson project,
That is correct.
okay?
So in this particular thing, it has been executed and signed by the insurance company in the amount of the improvements that was calculated and reviewed by the previous city engineer for this project. It contains everything except the dates that you're going to approve this expansion of the project, which will be an amendment to the back of this thing. And the only thing that lacks is the signature of Mr. McPherson. He's required to submit it to the planning commission. It ultimately becomes a portion, as with many other PUD projects, for the city commission to give final blessing on. But the document itself contains everything that we require.
In the amount that you like.
In the amount that we vetted and calculated based on the state regulations that we use for everything else. $481,640.25. The fee has been paid, the bond has been let, the signature's been done by the insurance company. The only signature it's lacking is Mr. McPherson's, and it has to be notarized under witness. That's why we had him bring it to the meeting tonight. It will then become part of the larger plan unit development.
So our vote is to accept or not accept that performance bond?
That is correct.
I make a motion we accept the performance bond.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments on that motion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unopposed? Okay, Sharon, anything else on that McPherson project?
No, sir, we are done with that.
Okay, so now we're moving on to item 9D, Golf Club of DVI South Harpeth Road. Are these all three, is D and E taken together as, is it one discussion?
No, sir, they are not.
Separate discussion.
The first one is DVI.
Okay, Golf Club of DVI South Harpeth Road inspections, soil erosion reports.
We have had no complaints of soil erosion escaping onto the roadway. I did receive, after requesting again, I'll get my head together in a second, I'm jumping from one thing to the other, trying to find it. The EPSC reports, on site, they still have not installed all the soil and erosion controls that are required for the plan, but we have had no impact to the roads or the adjacent properties since they were here. So this is just an update to let you know that things are rocking along fairly well at this point.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Next item, 9E, the Golf Club of Tennessee, 1000 Golf Club Drive, off-season improvements plan, revised submissions.
In your packet, in your side boundary packet, you have some comments from the city engineer that were let today. These are the off-season improvements. You have smaller versions of that, and I believe Mr. Quinn, who is with us, has a larger version, if you might share the off-season improvement packet with us. These have been previously approved and vetted by the Planning Commission. There are some minor revisions to these plans, and you'll also see the engineering comments that are in your side packet here, and I'll ask Peter to briefly go over those.
Most of my comments were because this submittal did not include a stormwater report. Now, that may have been submitted previously, but if it has, I haven't seen it. And per the stormwater ordinance, that the town adopted a long time ago, and that's required, as it should be by any stormwater ordinance. So the first 4 comments are basically submit a stormwater report and supporting documents. Then my other comments are drainage issues that may not be issues, but I need explanation or clarification from the developer's engineer.
So Peter, are you saying at this point you recommend that we don't accept it because it's missing some information? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Or defer until
Till the next meeting?
the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
and inform them? Have they already received this letter?
They should,
Okay, so defer until they provide the additional required information?
Requirement for that. If we could defer it, the second option is conditional approval, and I know how this board feels about that.
But conditional approval subject to staff review and approval of the missing items, is that what we're saying?
You can do it either way. As you remember from previous meetings, I'm required to tell you, you have that option to do it conditionally. These are required stormwater issues, and on both of these sites, that seems to be the resounding issue that we've had throughout. But none of you, are these in any way, Peter, significant enough to affect the outcome of the plan? Or are they something that you need?
that's a question for the developer. They could be, but they probably aren't. The only thing that could come out of these would be the addition of a detention pond and the addition of some
Be the what?
stormwater pipes.
I didn't hear you.
Retention pond.
A detention pond
Detention pond,
and
okay.
stormwater pipes, which I don't think these are going to change the scope of the project as a whole. I think they would just be smaller scale changes and then some calculations to support those changes.
So I'd like to make
I apologize, Mr. Kitch, but the reason I asked for that is that I don't see anything in this, in discussions with Peter, and really, this is our third or fourth round reviewing the same set of plans. I don't see anything that's gonna create an impact outside the footprint of this project. So it's, and not that I'm saying I don't care what happens to the project, it's not the way I mean it, but it does not have the potential to impact the roads, surrounding property owners. So, while it may have some impact on their final drawing set that they do as as-built, it doesn't have the potential to create issues for the town or the surrounding adjacent property owners. Does that help at all?
So that goes back to a motion for conditional approval subject to engineer review and approval or disapproval of the missing information.
And that's for the off-season
Off-season
improvements, not the turf
improvements only, not
maintenance.
the turf maintenance.
Or we could still defer it to the next meeting based on these things
You
being
have those two
fulfilled.
options in front of you. This is just for
mean,
the off-season.
I would like to make a motion that we just defer to the next meeting until this criteria has been approved by our city engineer, as opposed to making it conditional. We've done one tonight, but I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I'd like to hear from the engineer that this has all been fulfilled, it's all completed and done, and we're good standing.
Yeah. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, do we have additional discussion, Tony, on that motion?
Well, I mean, if everyone wants to go that way, I mean, my only, I'm fine doing it that way. My only counter logic to that is we're basing the deferral of this off of the engineer's recommendation right now, so
And
I would also feel comfortable letting the engineer make the decision, but I could go either way.
And if you look at the plan for the revision here, it's expanding the parking lot down by the clubhouse, which is in the middle of the property. And installing storm drains. Now, that's what he's uncomfortable about, is he doesn't know where the runoff's gonna go. Well, eventually it's gonna go in the creek. But the expansion of the parking lot is not, it's not tremendous, because there's not a lot of room there. So, I mean, when you get down to looking at this, you're adding a couple of rows of parking is all you're doing. And obviously, the curbing, the gutters, the piping that goes down to where the storm, that's what you want to look at, correct?
Right. And
So, you're not against it's not the scope of the expansion or any of that from the winter work, right?
It's just not having all the
it's
information.
just the finer details and not having all the information. And from a timing standpoint, I don't think it matters either way.
It
Because
doesn't.
by the time they submit everything I need and I review it,
It'll be next meeting?
it's gonna be a month either way.
Okay.
Well, then let's go ahead and, I'm comfortable with Craig's motion at
Yeah,
that point
sure.
then. It makes no difference, so.
It makes no difference on timing, I'm comfortable with this.
So we have a motion to defer to the next meeting until we get all the information that can be presented at that meeting. Is there any other question or discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so that passes. Next item is 9F, correct? And that is.
I apologize, there are two sets of plans under this same motion. If I may,
Move
Mr.
on to
Quinn,
the,
the second set of plans, Mr. Quinn, may I have a second set?
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. So we have the off-season improvements plan.
And then we
Item,
also have the turf maintenance facility plan.
okay.
It's not listed on our.
It's not
agenda.
listed on
It's
the
our-
agenda.
It's all part of the same
Same thing.
project footprint, it's just separated out because of the nature of what it is. So I'm gonna do a little orientation first. As you come down South Harpeth towards the bridge, and right before you get to the bridge, right after that little horseshoe turn there, you know where the road takes that little U? Right at the side, there is the maintenance facility for the Golf Club of Tennessee. It's a green building. Ms. Doris's property is right across the road. I'm trying to help orient everybody. There's a little triangle of property that they leased from or reached an agreement with Ms. Doris to use right at the maintenance facility. Okay, is everybody oriented for location? Yep. Okay. All right, that is this area right here on the plan. Okay? So we're in place. My concern with this submitted set of plans lies in a particular page. You have copies of it in the packet, but they're very, very small, difficult to read. And I'm just gonna walk out front with your permission.
Sure,
So we can get through this. All right. Okay. There is a driveway entrance here and a driveway entrance here.
Okay.
Okay, that serves, purported or proposed to serve that maintenance facility. This is the maintenance building in the parking lot that you're seeing on here. Okay? My concern was that as you come off the DBI site headed towards the bridge, right? DBI is above me, and I'm headed towards the South Harpeth Bridge. Maintenance facilities on my left. Right there is where that little road curves so badly that you can't see around it. I have expressed to Mr. Hooper when he first submitted these that I wanted one of these driveways eliminated. And the reason I wanted it eliminated is the road at that location is barely 18 feet wide. It's barely wide enough for two vehicles, two passenger vehicles to go through. So this location is proposed to bring all of the heavy traffic for big trucks and deliveries and semis and all of that in there, and I'm uncomfortable with having these two driveways that close together. They don't meet our regulations for the separation of driveways coming out onto the road. And I don't see any plans in the near future for South Harpeth Road to be widened or to give any advance of that. So for me, it's nothing other than a public safety concern because it's a blind curve. You can't see around it when you're coming off the
How
bridge.
far apart are the driveways?
They didn't put a measurement on here, which was one of Peter's comments for the plan, is what's the distancing. We require on a curve where you cannot get line of sight, we require a distance of 250 feet apart, and it's nowhere near that.
Can you hold that up again, Sharon?
Sure.
So,
make a quick comment?
so one point you pointed is this road here, you can see it's wider.
Right.
Is that right?
No.
That's not the
The road
road?
is not wider.
So-
This is South Harpeth Road. It's this little lane in
It's the
there.
same road,
Yeah, this is a right of way.
but this is in the middle of the curve. The
Right
curve's going like this, right?
And it goes really, I don't know if that's the best drawing.
The
but
curve's
goes-
actually right over here.
Yeah, it's the little horseshoe curve right here. And so you've got one here and a hump, and you've got a blind hill right here, where you just can't
Okay,
see anything.
okay.
And then you've got another one proposed here. I just wanted to reduce it to one location. I'm ambivalent about which one, because it's wide enough at 50 feet that they can get two lanes of traffic in and out. They'll have egress and ingress. I just don't want them coming out of two different locations on this curve that close to the horse pen turn into the bridge. So that's my comment on that, is I would like for them to remove one of those driveways.
Have you talked to the golf club about that?
Yes, Mr. Hooper has been on town. Mr. Quinn is here with us tonight. Mr. Quinn had not seen the comments or been, so I asked him if he would be willing to defer this till the next month. And I believe Mr. Quinn is in agreement with that for this one. Mr. Yoder, yes.
We are, but my comment would be that the first road would be an entrance point. The second existing road would be an exit road. So the road on the curve would only be for entrance purposes only. The exit road would remain the same, the current road near the Brush Creek Bridge.
So they'd have one-way signage on them?
Yes.
And I appreciate your comment. Having said that, my concern is just the vision and the line of sight. If we require a certain number of feet of distance between driveways connecting off of a property, and this one just doesn't meet that. So Jeff and I had that discussion initially. Jeff is out of town today, so with their consent, I would like to ask to defer this until next month, until that correction can be made. There's some other small things in there. We sent them comments on, we want them to address. Failing that, my recommendation would be to deny, because you only have so many days to approve or deny. You have to make a decision.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to defer.
Second it.
Okay, any questions, comments on that motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes to defer. Okay, the next item we have is in Java Dobby project, stop work order, stormwater issues, meeting, owner complaint, project update. Is that, John, is that something Sharon's gonna provide?
It is.
Okay.
The county needs to do something in San Marcos Road, period.
Yes.
That road- that road-
It's pretty rough. I was over the other day.
I agree.
It's almost, you gotta slow down when you're passing a vehicle, not semi or
Sharon, we're ready for item 10 or 9F.
I apologize.
That's okay, Punjab Dobby
It's an
project.
update. I believe that Tony received a complaint from the owner of the Punjabi restaurant with regard to how long it was taking for staff to allow them to get a final inspection on the addition that they did. You'll remember back, this one started without a permit. We worked through all of that. They put forth a stormwater plan, submitted it, it was reviewed by the engineer and approved. They then installed, we're on stormwater installation number 3. They installed it, didn't pass. They installed something else that didn't pass. So Peter and I have met with them several times. They agreed to go back to the original plan. Just do what you put on the paper and it'll all be fine. So that was done. He had a couple hiccups on that when he did his inspection, but none that can't be taken care of easily. It's more like caulking and I believe a gasket that needs to be replaced. So, as I explained to the applicant, I just wanted you to be aware of the origin of this complaint and how it was addressed. We could not issue a CO because the area where the employees enter the addition of the kitchen was in the area they dug up for the stormwater disposal system. It was really dicey to tread that site for a while. So I explained to James, the owner, once you pass the stormwater inspection, all you need to do at that point is pave, because the paving's all eroded and torn up now, pave it straight, and we'll send it in. So after all of that, I got an email from him early this week stating that they were beginning the process to lay the gravel in, pave the parking lot and stripe it. So we'll be moving on and hopefully close that project out after 17 months.
Okay, is that just an update then?
Just enough.
Okay. So is this item 10B, PC training, something that we can defer?
You can defer it, or you have one other option. I ask that you all read the summary of the bill. They're included in the bill. These are things that directly affect what you do as a planning commission. Some of them are what I lovingly refer to as unfunded mandates, like notify every developer where the gas lines are. We don't have the map, the state does. So we gotta get the map, settle it, do all of that. So if you'll read them, I'm going to send you before next month, because we have to get this done before December. I'll send you one question for each bill. If you can answer that question, you're done with training. Otherwise, we're gonna go through these.
The bills are in here.
They're in here.
Sounds like an open book test
Look
to
in the
me.
back of your
They're
packet.
also on the email she sent us.
Favorite, my parties.
Yeah.
You had
We'll
the,
put it back.
you had the
There you go.
citations.
They're in the pack.
Yeah, this is
They
the
were
same
in the
stuff you
email
emailed
for the
to us
September
a
meeting.
couple of weeks ago.
It said we weren't having a meeting.
I
I missed the
emailed
meeting.
it
I was like,
2 weeks
I just saw the
ago.
headline, I just saw the
So
title
if
for
you
the
guys would
meeting,
just
and I thought that was the end of
read
the
the
email.
summaries.
There was more to it.
The two that I'm primarily concerned with for you have to do with public infrastructure requirements for developers. I don't know how many of you know, but there was a really ugly case in Nashville.
No particular reason, it's.
I'm sorry, I
They
can't
got
hear you.
sued over sidewalks in Nashville. They required sidewalks in Nashville.
Okay.
Development. They got sued. It went all the way to Tennessee Supreme Court. They lost. So you need to be aware of this legislation. So if it's not within a planned development, a subdivision or a PUD, you're not getting sidewalks unless you're getting a grant, getting them put in yourself, okay? Which you do, you're fine. I'm just saying, as you move forward in the future, you can't do that. You'll get sued. The second one that I am concerned with is that it's common sense to me, maybe not to the state legislature, but if you submit a building permit on Monday and the regulation says you are to, I don't know, walk your puppy 3 times a day, and then Tuesday it says the cat, you have to review that permit under the date it was submitted and what was in place at the time, which we always do. So most of these have 0 impact on you, okay? The next piece of legislation, the state legislature, in its eminent wisdom, decided that local governments will no longer have any input on infrastructure projects, including methane gas burning plants, oil drilling operations, or any of the other things. So you no longer have an input. You are reduced to writing a letter of approval or displeasure.
This is on.
Just so you know.
Okay, and so on other, I just want to ask in the future, as an item, when we see an agenda that might have a little room, our requirements in Kingston Springs for permits for grading and building and those kinds of things have come before this planning commission. And there seems to be little flexibility on, like, if there's a little tiny piece of one of the requirements, that still requires a permit. If we could have some training led by you, so we can understand this stuff, before we have somebody sitting in here asking why he had to get a permit. I'm being facetious here, for a 5-inch section of the sidewalk that he had to replace with concrete. I'm being facetious, but if we could get some training and better understand why and what and you know, what we have.
I completely concur with that. We have a number of requirements and regulations in the zoning ordinance that are, in my humble opinion, totally unnecessary. Your zoning document was a state drafted model. Over the years, the city's amended it. Tony and Mr. Hargis and Craig probably, what, 400 or 500 times? So it's now become a document literally over, since 1987, probably that many times. It's becoming difficult to read, extraordinarily difficult to interpret to the layman, and it needs to be revised. I concur with you. I think some things are senseless, but for staff, we're in this little box.
I understand. I just think if we could kind of have a discussion with training and understand, first of all, what it is and even your opinion on where the limitations are, but we may have questions about limitations.
Absolutely, and the facetious suggestion or the reference that you did, I would say that it would start with eliminating or revising the definition of a structure.
Sure, I mean, and that's, you bring that
kind of
knowledge,
thing.
but we can have the discussion. And maybe it's more than one, maybe we have to break it down into parts, but I'd like to see us go through that.
I would love the input of the planning commission on that, and I would love to have those discussions. We, John and I have been discussing this particular project, what, John, 3 years now?
At least, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we all want safe housing, we all want safe
Right.
structures, but it'd be nice for us to learn what's in there.
Absolutely, and we would love to be able to revise it as we go, because we've been trying to get our heads above water.
I would be
the
for
past
that.
few years.
It needs revision,
I would say it.
for simplicity.
I think it not only needs simplicity, I think that it needs a really good scrubbing of unnecessary requirements that drain time and energy from everything.
Amen.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion items before we adjourn? Do we have a motion to, okay, Sharon?
No, I'm just saying, please, motion
Do we
to.
have a motion to
I
adjourn?
would like to grant Sharon's wish.
And do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.